Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to AI for Good. We hope that you, your families, your friends, and your colleagues are all keeping healthy and safe. My name is Fred Werner from the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, and it's a privilege to introduce today's webinar. Now, the ITU is the United Nations Specialized Agency for Information and Communication Technologies, and we're also the organizers of the AI for Good Global Summit alongside X Prize Foundation in partnership with 38 UN sister agencies, ACM, and co-convened with Switzerland. And the goal of the AI Summit is to organize and identify practical applications of AI to advance the Sustainable Development Goals and scale the solutions for global impact. And another one of our goals is to connect problem owners with AI innovators to help identify AI for good solutions. And I believe that today's webinar is a perfect example of this as we bring together a world champion football player and an AI-powered medical startup to help cure global heart disease globally. Now, before I introduce today's moderator, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping issues. First of all, your microphone and your chat function has been disabled, so please only use the Q&A chat function to communicate. It's the role of a moderator to identify questions, and we're counting on your active participation to have a very interactive session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's moderator. Her name is LJ Rich, and she's a very well-known TV presenter on the BBC technology show called BBC Click. LJ, it's great to have you back, and I feel very comfortable leaving the audience in your very capable hands. LJ, the show is yours. Welcome.
Hello, thank you very much, Fred, and welcome everybody to today's very special edition of the ITU's AI for Good webinar series. And it's all about how AI can revolutionize the diagnosis of cardiac diseases. I'm LJ Rich, AI musician, technology presenter, and a portable applause holder here. And I'm here to moderate you for this event. And our very special guest will be speaking in Spanish. But if you select English, you'll hear our amazing simultaneous interpreters at work. In fact, you can also choose the English feed, the Spanish feed, or the floor feed, which will be the original audio for those that can understand both. With that in mind, let's start with some career highlights from our first guest, a taste of what it takes to be one of the top goalkeepers in the world.
¿Qué es el Real Madrid para ti?
Para mí es mi casa. Empecé en el entorno social con 8 años, me cogieron con 9, he pasado por todas las categorías del club, hasta a nivel profesional, y a día de hoy pues no entendería mi vida sin el Real Madrid.
Cuando era pequeño, mi padre me llevaba a un campo de fútbol sala que había al lado de mi casa, jugaba con él, me ponía de portero y ahí empezó todo.
Yo cuando voy por la calle, todo lo que encuentro es buenas palabras, respeto, agradecimiento, cariño de la gente, cariño que es del madridismo, del fútbol, e incluso cariño de la gente que no es del Madrid.
what an energetic start to our webinar. And it feels kind of counterintuitive to think someone who's reached this kind of peak physical condition would have a cardiac event. But Iker Casillas didn't let a heart attack stop him. And instead, he wants to help the world improve cardiovascular health using AI, our kind of person. And this aligns with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 3, good health and well-being. So how will this work? Well, please join me in welcoming the athlete, the star of that video, and someone who has lifted more than 28 national and international trophies, including the actual World Cup in 2010. Let's hear more from the one, the only, Iker Casillas.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone from Spain.
Yours.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, after being playing at a professional level for 21 years, one day I was training, and after a follow-up of a different kind of health issues in the different teams where I was working, I was training, I was running some tracks on the football pitch, and then I started feeling uncomfortable. I started having this kind of ache on the chest, and somehow I can see that I could not be very balanced. I thought it was something due to some allergies, because I have some allergies, but it was something very different. I was about to have a heart attack, and the attitude from the medical services of the Porto Club was perfect. They took care of me. It was moments of great difficulty, of great stress, and we were all kind of anxious. And luckily, it all was something that was reduced to a threat. And at that moment, I started thinking about very important things in life.
Iker, we can chat about it. And thank you so much for telling us such a remarkable story. And we're so glad you're here to tell us about it. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We will set the scene a little more, and then we'll go into more of a discussion feel shortly after this video, which kind of gives us a little bit more of a background about AI, sports and cardiovascular health with the AI component of our talk, Idabun. So let's hear a little bit more about that. Wow. Well, okay, let's introduce the cardiologist, co-founder and CEO of Eindhoven, Dr. Manuel Marina Beresa. Hello there. How are you? Round of applause. Like a football stadium there.
Hi, LJ. How are you? Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
So tell us more.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, ITU and the United Nations for letting us be in here talking about why and what we do. And at the end, Eindhoven was born to reduce cardiovascular disease and sudden cardiac death. And we are doing it by automating the way cardiac arrhythmias are diagnosed using artificial intelligence. I think it's a big problem. It's the first cause of death and the leading cause of death worldwide, the single largest cost driver for the global healthcare system. And so I'm a cardiologist. I have seen this pain firsthand every single day. And we realized that the real problem was time. That doctors spend almost 1 million hours a day in Europe analyzing electrocardiograms, also known as ECGs, which is the way we diagnose arrhythmias. And we realized at that time that this inefficiency is part of our overall annual cost of almost 800 billion euros a year. So there is a massive problem, highly manual, that we can make more efficient using artificial intelligence. And so it's for us a pleasure to be here, to be ready to open discussion about how artificial intelligence solutions can change the way healthcare is performed worldwide, and how these technological advances can have a high impact on the society to benefit the patients, to benefit people, to benefit healthcare systems, and to benefit the society.
Okay, thank you so much for your opening statements, both of you. So I think what we're going to do is all turn our cameras and sound on, and I'm going to start with a question to you, Iker. How important is studying cardiovascular behaviour in athletes? How does it fit into studying all the data that must be available on a human?
Without any doubt, our body and our heart have a crucial role for performance, and not only in football, but in any kind of sports. The heart requires a huge effort, and sportsmen, athletes, have to perform very well on every sport. So the more you invest in having a good performance, in this case of a football player, so that he can do better his work, the more beneficial it will be for the athlete. That is something essential.
Wow, it's a fascinating area. And audience, please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A tab of our webinar, and we're going to ask the best ones to our panelists. So Manuel, I'm going to ask, what happened when the two of you met?
So as Iker explained, 2 years ago, he suffered a heart attack while in training. And when people experience something like that, their life changes. Iker is now recovered, but he's more aware than ever about the importance of taking care of his heart. At that time, when he suffered the heart attack, he learned about our project, and then he contacted us. And after several conversations on how to help us, it was clear for him that he wanted to support and be part of this project. At the end, the key point there was the common objective of helping to prevent heart attacks and all the cardiac disease, and in individuals and in sport people at any level. So that was the main framework of the discussions. And then for us, it's a pleasure to have him on board. And we think we cannot have found a better ally due to his sporting career and having experienced a heart problem firsthand. he's undoubtedly the best place to understand the importance of what we do.
Brilliant, thank you. Iker, what does AI and Eindhoven provide as a solution for athletes? Is this something that the clubs do? Is this something that, well, let's start with what actually happens between Eindhoven and the person.
As Manuel said, when I had my cardiac event, I came across Manuel and Eindhoven, and then I get interested in my own health, obviously, but not only my own health, but my fellow sportsmen's health. So I think Eindhoven can help you to feel secure because your heart is being monitored and your body is being monitored. So it gives you peace of mind, not only to you, the sportsman, but also the clubs, whether it's for athletes, for basket players, football players. I mean, in the end, the sportsman, the athlete, needs to be able to train and perform in order to reach victory, which is what all sportsmen want. So this is why this is so important.
Thank you. And Manuel, let's just talk a little bit about how the system actually works.
Willem is the name we gave to our artificial intelligence software. At the end, we are a tech company developing software, and we, to honor the Nobel Prize Willem Eindhoven, our software name is Willem. So it's a cloud platform that reads the electrocardiogram, the ECG, of any duration from any manufacturer or any hospital, and gives you a medical diagnosis with all the arrhythmias found. That's what the platform do. And the good point is it's working. Willem currently diagnosed 74 most frequent arrhythmias, affecting 10% of the global population, and with an accuracy higher than 90%. So this means achieving cardiologist level accuracy. And
is that
moreover,
the same as a doctor's diagnosis, 90%?
The same way we diagnose, we cardiologists and we doctors diagnose the arrhythmias, we are automating this process, helping those doctors to be more accurate, more efficient, to reduce costs and to reduce time. And moreover, we have been the first and unique team able to predict the 6 months behavior of atrial fibrillation. So this is not automating the diagnosis, but doing also prediction at 6 months, not based on risk scores, but atrial fibrillation is the most common sustained arrhythmia in the general population. It affects 4% of the global population older than 40 years old. So it's a huge problem. And we were able, working together with 50 European hospitals, we were able to publish that paper on the highest impact factor in the arrhythmia field, because we were the first ones saying, if you train algorithms, if you use data and big data, you can do things that doctors cannot do. You can predict the behavior of an arrhythmia affecting millions of people.
That's remarkable, isn't it? Iker, I presume you're monitoring yourself at the moment? If you are, can you tell us what you're gathering?
Yes, of course, I'm monitoring myself. I am being followed very closely, monitored by my Portuguese cardiologist, someone I got very close to when I suffered my cardiac event in Portugal. So every 4 months I travel to Oporto to be monitored and to see how my heart is doing. And also through Manuel from Eindhoven, I am being followed. Obviously, they're following me with a machine that regulates your blood pressure, your heartbeats, and sees if you have any event. And between Eindhoven and my Portuguese cardiologist, I'm very happy and I have peace of mind.
Wow. Manuel, can you tell us a bit about the difficulties of making this sort of software work? How long did it take you to feel confident enough to let it out into the world?
This is a good one. At the end, I think it's important to have a strong knowledge on the field you are trying to develop, the technology you are creating, and if you are talking about artificial intelligence, this is even more important. At the end, I'm a cardiologist. I have a master's degree in statistics, and my co-founder is one of my co-founders is a telecommunication engineer with a PhD on machine learning applied to cardiology, and we both have been working as researchers for almost 7 years at FENIC. FENIC is a leading center for cardiovascular research in Europe, and together we have published 29 scientific papers in high-impact journals. So at the end, the technology we are creating is the result of all that scientific and technical knowledge. And I believe to make AI, no matter the project, AI algorithms work, at least in science, you need to train them, and you need to build a team of talented people and with that kind of knowledge, because you need to do what's called supervised learning. Supervised learning is an approach where these algorithms you are creating are trained with input data where experts' knowledge have been included. You include data and you include knowledge, scientific knowledge, really difficult one, and then the algorithms work. Otherwise, it's very difficult nowadays, from my point of view, to make sense of those data. And so you need those long periods of time doing science and long periods of time learning about how the problem works and how the data works and what's the input and the output of those algorithms.
Yes, with supervised learning, that's going to add a lot of time to making something work. My goodness, that is a lot of work. Iker, I'm going to ask you, what was it about this company that persuaded you to endorse them?
Well, for me, it's obvious that Manuel makes me feel trust. From the first moment I met him and all his team, I felt confidence. And also, they give a very real, practical solution, because this software is monitoring all the time the well-being of your heart and your body. Also, Idoven is a Spanish company. And you know, they've done something incredible, and they've made a reality, something that is, that was a dream, really, to be able to control and diagnose any heart attacks.
Thank you. Manuel, can you tell us a little more about machine learning and health?
I think machine learning in healthcare has come to stay. For example, when we started this project, it took me 8 hours as a cardiologist to analyze long-term continuous Holter recordings of my patients. And now we do that in less than 30 minutes, and some patients in less than 5 minutes. So machine learning is good at automating repetitive tasks in which doctors we provide a little added value, and it's precisely in this task where machines and software-based algorithms or machine learning can help us make that medicine we do more precise, more efficient, with lower cost or faster. At the end, this can have a high impact on the quality of the patient's care. And AI can dramatically reduce the cost of those diagnoses. All the tests that are performed nowadays worldwide can be automated or semi-automated at a doctor's level. No? At the end, that's what we experience. So I think it will have a high impact on the healthcare system. And this can allow us, such solutions can allow us, for example, to make massive screening campaigns to detect the disease in a subclinical stage. Subclinical stage means when there is no before symptoms. So if you want to change the way we do medicine, you have to be able to detect those strange patterns and those hearts that are not beating well before those patients have symptoms. And all the prevention campaigns all carried out by different healthcare systems, they are based on that. They are based on that, and they have demonstrated that these strategies reduce the incidence of serious disease, it reduces the cost derived from those diseases. So the earlier you diagnose, the better the prognosis of the patient and will be, and the lower the cost will be. So I think it's a really important tool that came a few years ago and will stay forever.
It's a fascinating area. I don't know if you've read about there's a Japanese patisserie that used AI to distinguish between different kinds of baked goods. So what a pastry looked like, and that algorithm has been adapted to be used in clinical settings to recognize whether something is a cancerous cell or not. So there's a lot of very interesting stuff going on in sort of AI and healthcare and early diagnosis. And it's obviously an area I'm fascinated by. Now, I'm obviously a technology person, but Iker, I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about technology in general? Has your attitude changed to it over the years?
Well, nowadays, there is absolutely no doubt that technology is going to make a revolution in the world. We need to adapt to what's going on in the world nowadays. Whatever we can do to improve our daily lives, I think is rightly done. And if this technology can help in the medical area, in the healthcare systems, anything from technology that can improve daily lives, people's daily lives, and prevent any disease or any event like the cardiac event I had, I think is the right thing to do.
Of course, thank you. Manuel, what do you think needs to happen for AI-based solutions to be the first port of call in hospitals and health systems? We're sort of on our way, but obviously there's a few things that need to happen for it to become a bit more commonplace.
For sure. I think hospitals, healthcare systems, politicians and also regulators must seek the digitalization. At the end, the important keyword there is to make that happen, digitalization must be real. So a year ago, we met a delegation from the European Commission that came to Madrid to understand what we need as a startup and what startups like us need to make that real. And a very interesting part of that conversation was when we discussed what it would take for a company like us to be able to remotely diagnose, for example, patients at the hospital in Japan or patients in Africa. And medical data, and the key point there is medical data, they can travel the same way an email travels. Mm-hmm. But the infrastructure and the single digital market, we were talking about that, about the single digital market that has to be created, should create a framework in which remote medical and digital medical activity is possible. And nowadays, this framework is not created. It's just the beginning of that framework. And on the other hand, just as other industries have been digitized and behind these digitations have come multiple waves of innovation, in healthcare, the first step to digitize hospitals and health systems, I think they have to focus on the same way other solutions like iPhone did. Like you create a platform, a digital platform, or where many developers, many creators, many innovators can connect through a plug and play. So you have the hospital, a digital platform solution, and solutions like the one we have can connect through a plug and play and add value to those hospitals, add value to those data. Those doctors are recording, those doctors are doing different complementary tests, and they are putting all that information in a medical report. But if you are able to connect those medical records with the same way you have apps on your mobile phone, the running app, the music app, and Google Maps, for example, the same way those hospitals will have several solutions, AI solutions that will do the process more efficient, reduce the cost, be able to diagnose things that are not diagnosed nowadays. I think it should be the two big things to think about.
It's a really interesting situation, because having worked in hospitals, I understand there's a lot of things that you kind of feel are difficult to implement, especially when there's new technology, but something has been done a certain way for a long time. So I think there's an element of how do we show that this actually can save time, save lives, and save, I guess, the bottom line, because if you're needing less people to take time to diagnose, then perhaps that might be a factor as well. Iker, I'm just going to change the subject ever so slightly to the future, and this is the future of sport and data gathering, because obviously as a pro athlete, you have had every part of you measured for some time now. Where do you think that might go in the future in terms of bodily measurements?
Well, I think that more and more we analyze the different members of a club, the athletes. We try to monitor them to see what we can improve and how we can train them. And all of that thanks to the different data we can gather. And at the end of the day, I believe that everyone wants to know the other part. Even our opponents would like to know how their opponent is, how he works, how he reacts. And every day, people like Manuel or other people, we understand that they want to make a very specific follow-up and monitoring of the people. I think that this is going to be part of our daily basis, of our daily routine, and it's very important, and most of all for sports.
Mm-hmm. Analytics is particularly interesting in sports because you have things like a tennis racket that can determine whereabouts on the racket the ball is being hit, and then that data can be downloaded afterwards for analysis. And there's all kinds of areas where analytics are used in sports. So it kind of feels like there's this amazing amount of data that's just waiting to be cleaned and inputted into something. Manuel, what made you concentrate specifically on heart disease?
Well, at the end, I'm a cardiologist, and as I said, I have seen this pain firsthand every single day. And cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death and the single largest cost driver in the global healthcare system. So it's a big problem. And those kind of problems, as you know, startups and all the team at Eindhoven, we want to solve big problems, and the problem is the more motivated than the purpose of the company is. No, so at the end, we thought when we started, we thought that the real problem was time. There were no appropriate measurement tools to solve it, and at the beginning, I wasted hours every week analyzing my patients' electrocardiograms data, trying to diagnose those diseases at an early stage, or even predicting their behavior. And as I look around in my hospital, I saw there were dozens of physicians like me dealing with the same problem. So there are thousands of medical doctors facing this very same situation every day in our country and millions in the world. So at the end, it was 2015, and at that time I was working at that research center, the Spanish National Cardiovascular Research Center, together with one of my co-founders, Jose Maria Lillo, and at the end we both believed that technology was the way to reduce those deaths, and that was the key point. So we started doing scientific research, then writing code, then we left our jobs. We built the plan together with Inigo Juantegui, the third co-founder at Eindhoven, and we founded this startup. No? And then the idea was to solve that big problem affecting millions of people. We think this should be the solution, and we built Willem, the software, and now that it's a product, and it's a cloud-based artificial intelligence platform that analyzes electrocardiograms and to try to solve that problem, to detect and classify arrhythmias at a cardiologist level. That's what we do. So at the end, is the whole story that fits why we do that.
Great, thank you. Iker, what tips would you give young athletes on looking after their heart health?
Without any doubt, they have to do this follow-up every 3 months. If I could come back on time, I think I would have done it constantly on a regular basis. Athletes also suffer a lot of pressure during competition that generates stress, and that could also lead to a heart attack. Personally, I would recommend 100% to do a follow-up. Not only athletes, any person who is at home and could have this follow-up to be, free of mind and no stress.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Manuel, how can Eindhoven change the current statistic of heart disease being the #1 cause of death?
I think this is a great part of our project. At the end, we have a social impact is really strong. We have performance study together with Unlimited Spain, which is an organization that support companies and projects that want to have an impact on the society. And together with Lily, we underwent a study on how to measure the impact we can have if we are able to commercialize and if our product can be used the way we want to be used. And at the end, we have calculated that by 2025, almost 1 million patients will be diagnosed 5 years earlier, saving more than 600,000 hospitalizations, and more than 38,000 patients will not die from an undiagnosed cardiac disease. So at the end, you are talking that you are able to have a huge impact, as you said at the beginning of the talk, in a sustained objective of the Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals. Yeah, that's it.
Yes, I get
and
you.
So you can have a high impact because you are doing medicine and you are changing the way medicine can be done. And our objective is to be global. So we work every day to give access to high quality, affordable heart diagnosis to all patients, from infants to adults, or from pro athletes to high risk individuals. So at the end, you can add value and you can help any citizen in the world.
Wow. Okay. Well, Iker, let me bring you in here because you have the Iker Casillas Foundation, and that's working with Eindhoven. Could you tell us a little more about what's going on there?
It's a collaboration in order to give more visibility to this project and to everything that Eindhoven does for people. There is a very beautiful campaign called Heartbeats. And I hope that with these, Eindhoven will grow. And maybe Eindhoven will solve a lot of emerging problems. We are also working with vulnerable people, people who don't have very high resources, and they could feel better if they need any kind of help.
Thank you. all right, both of you, I'd like to know a little bit about this donating your heartbeats. Who'd like to go first?
I can start maybe. As Iker said, the power of health data, we are talking about heartbeats because that's what we do, but the power of health data lies on each healthy or sick person. So we are doing medical advances, we are creating technology based on artificial intelligence. So you need those heartbeats. You need to show the algorithms real data, real heartbeats. So citizens are afraid sometimes about they want my medical data, but I think institutions, healthcare institutions, governments, companies like us, startups, we should create those reliable frameworks where people can feel comfortable sharing some data. For COVID, some data has allowed to reduce death, and the same way some apps did in COVID, we can do in several sectors of the healthcare system, like oncology and radiology and cardiology. So at the end, what we have created is the first heartbeat donors worldwide, and you can donate the digital heartbeats and allow us to do R&D and train our algorithms to help others, not only to know if you are sick or not, but also to help others to prevent those kind of diseases.
So you can actually donate your heartbeats to this project. Iker, I'm going to come to you next to ask a little bit about that. In the meantime, I'm going to start a poll for you, our wonderful audience. Would you be donating your heartbeats? And you should be able to participate now. It, for some reason, is being called the satisfaction survey, but don't worry, we're actually wondering whether you would donate your heartbeats. We hope that you are enjoying this seminar, and thank you all so much for your amazing patience while our fabulous interpreters do their job. This is really quite fabulous to be able to talk in 2 languages at once. So, Iker, have you donated your heartbeats?
Of course I have. Manuel has them, and I make a call to everyone, upon everyone, so that you donate your heartbeat. It is something very useful, and I know that Manuel and his team will make a very good use of it.
Thank you. Another question for both of you. Has anything really surprised you about working within AI, healthcare and sport all at the same time? I guess, Manuel, let's start with you.
I think the most important thing, startups are a small project and that can innovate really fast. So at the end, I think for innovation to occur, at least in AI, in healthcare, in sports, you need to be able to learn really fast. I think the key point is how fast you learn and how fast you want to learn, because some people do not want to understand everything because it's too much information. But I think the key point for those kind of projects is how fast you learn.
Mm-hmm. And Iker, what about you? What surprised you the most about going into AI?
I don't know if I ever told Manuel. I think it's something fabulous. And sometimes I think it's like magic, because we can see all these details and this follow-up and all this knowledge, in this case, about one person.
It's a very interesting area, and it still is in its infancy. And I would encourage anybody watching who isn't already kind of dipping their toe into AI to have a look. It's much easier to start playing with it than you think, actually. And if I also think if I can do it, then probably quite a few other people can too. Okay, it's time to take some questions from you, our lovely audience. Thank you so much. And our interpreters are also translating some questions for Iker as well, and will provide his answer in English to you as well. This is so brilliant. All right, let's have a look. And I'm going to start with, let's see, I'll go with the translated question first. Let me find it. Yes, how do you think children can be made aware from an early age about heart disease and how to act in critical situations, or how to, I'm presuming, how to prevent having heart disease, or if that's even possible? Manuel, I suspect this is a question for you.
Yeah, there is a lot of studies about that. And at CENIC, the Spanish National Research Center, some principal investigators were leading studies, multi-center studies about that. And at the end, I think you can have an impact through the TV. Through the TV, you can show those young kids how important it is to eat well, the food, the fruits you eat every day, the way you eat. How important it is to move, to do some kind of sport, not always the same, and not high performance sport if you are not if you were not for that, or if you are not Iker. But at the end, you have to do some kind of sport every day and be aware of that. And also parents, not only the TV, but the parents should do those kind of things. Otherwise, those habits that you are creating on those kids are going to persist. So I think that the two things are how the family eats, how the family lives, and if there is cardiovascular risk factors are low on those kind of families. So it's to be aware of that and be conscious that the way you do is the way they are going to do, those kids.
It's a very difficult thing, isn't it? Because I think all of us get told to eat less salt and do more exercise and get more sleep. And it's one of those things that's quite difficult to motivate ourselves to do. And we do have a question here about athletes being very self-motivated and perhaps more conscious of self-care, physical, mental, emotional. So how can we motivate people to look into this more? Iker, maybe this is a question for you.
How can we convince people of taking care of themselves? I think everyone has nearby in their lives people who had some sort of disease or even a cardiac event. And since we're talking about cardiac events, well, let's focus on that. Doctors always tell us to eat well, to practice some sport, and that's essential. It is very important to do it through schools, to raise awareness among children that, about the fact that if they have a healthy life and they monitor how they're feeling, actually, they're going to be happier. If you want to have a good life, a long life, well, there's no way out of doing things right, like having a healthy life in every sense of the word.
Thank you. Yes, we've got a poll back which says 90% of you are happy to donate your heartbeat data. My goodness, that's brilliant. As a host, I couldn't click my yes, but I'm very glad to see that has come out that way. And yes, I think if anonymized data is absolutely the way to go here. All right, let's see if we've got time for a few more questions. I think I saw one earlier about other personal technologies. Yes, there's a question about Apple Watch, Fitbit, wearable devices. Are these technologies worth it? Are they good enough? Are we getting the next sort of generation coming in the next sort of 6 to 12 months? Manuel, would you like to talk a little about where you think wearable is going?
Wearables are becoming medical device. Some of them, I don't want to say which one, but some of them have announced that they have FDA approval, so the Food and Drug Regulation approval. So at the end, those kind of devices are going to reach the patients and are going to reach the citizens, poor people, where they are. So they can help doctors and help healthcare systems. But the important thing there is the way you use those data, the way you use those devices to do medicine, because normally they are not used to understand how medicine works and how healthcare works. So if you are becoming another thing that you are not, from the previous years you were a watch and now you are a medical device, you have to be sure of what you want to know and what you want to tell those kind of patients, because otherwise a lot of patients are coming to us and to the hospital saying like, my smartwatch is telling me that I have an arrhythmia, and what do I do with that? So at the end, you can generate more confusion than solve problems. So that this is the important key point, I think, about those devices.
Brilliant, thank you. Manuel, I'm going to stay with you because there's an interesting question about algorithmic biases and reliability for patients that may not be represented in the data set for training. Just as a quick primer, if the data is only one demographic or just men, for example, over 60, then that's going to skew any results if you have somebody female under 45, for example. So do we know anything about the data that you've trained the AI on, or are you in need of extra data from somewhere or from certain demographics?
Yeah, for sure. This is about generalization of your algorithms. So at the end, you have trained data sets, test data sets, but then you put those kind of technology on the real world and how it generalized. This is the key point. So the more heterogeneous your data are, the assumption is the better it will generalize. This is the key point. So at the end, you have to balance those train and test data sets to be able to be accurate when using this kind of technology in the real world. But it's a really good question, for sure.
Okay, I'm going to ask a couple of closing questions, and if we have time, one or two more audience questions. So this question is to both of you. I might start with you, please, Iker. What's the thing you would most like to change about the world, or what do you hope for in the next 5 years? Now, I'm aware this could be a very long answer, but we've got time.
What would I like to change, or what would I like to see in the next 5 years? Well, I would like this pandemic to be over, first of all, and go back to our lives. You know, it is true that we've learned a new reality, new ways of being able to continue with our lives. For example, this remote meeting is an example. Virtual meetings have become so common, but we all want to go back to where we were a year ago, you know, just have a normal life. Somehow we hope this had been a nightmare, just a bad nightmare. Of course, this has been a unique experience, and I think we've learned a lot, but we all just want to be like we were before the pandemic.
Of course. And Manuel, what about you? Obviously, we're going to presume that we want the pandemic to be over, but are there things that are more specific, I think, to AI or to healthcare that you would like to see changing? Could that be anything from attitudes of other healthcare professionals towards this sort of technology, right through to the ability to access data, or something that you would really like that would help achieve what you're after?
For sure, as Iker said, the COVID pandemic has to end. And then from the AI perspective, I think this is real. Those kind of solutions exist. So in the one we have for electrocardiograms, but there are other solutions in other disease. So I think that should be implemented. A lot of pilots, a lot of trials has to arise on the next years to show the evidence of that kind of solutions and to really have an impact. And the problem sometimes with science is that you publish the paper, the scientific paper, in a high impact peer reviewed journal, but nobody implements the solution, and you are creating knowledge. You are in the state of the art of that kind of knowledge, but it doesn't reach the patient. So the way to reach the patient is to be convinced that this is true. This is not the future. We are talking about AI which is analyzing patients and detecting arrhythmias and heart problems of those patients. There is a big opportunity to implement those kind of solutions in the healthcare system and the hospitals and on my own medical practice, on the patients or other healthcare providers. So I think this should be the most important thing for AI in healthcare in the next 5 years.
Oh, brilliant. And I'm going to just pin on a very quick question from our social media stream. What's the current focus on the heart health for athletes in training?
This one is for me?
Yes, let's do that.
At the end, in athletes, you should focus on two things. Protect human life. At the end, you don't want them to have heart problems, and then increase performance. So both are important. The first one is the one doctors used to be focused on, and the second one is the one that sport people use and athletes used to be focusing on. So at the end, you should balance both of them. And for example, that's what we do. We look at those hearts really carefully to be able to detect strange patterns at an early stage, but we also help those athletes or those kind of sport people or patients that want to improve their performance. We recommend them how to train and how to use the data we can analyze to increase the way they practice their sport, no matter the sport they do.
Brilliant, thank you. And a final question to you, Iker. As a sports person, what's the next thing you're hoping technology can do for you?
That's a very good question. Let's see. I don't know what to answer, really, what technology can do for me next. I think technology is going to be developed more and more, of course. It's like when you beat a record, a world record. We thought we could not run quicker than, X meters in 10 seconds. Well, and we actually beat that record. So I think technology is simply going to push its limits. It's going to go further. And I do hope that this development of technology will make it more performant and I hope this technology will renew itself continuously to end up helping us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both ever so much. I'm aware that we could probably talk for quite some more time about these subjects, so I really appreciate your time, and sad to say that we're going to close this panel. I would like to extend thanks to the AV team, the tech team, and all at the ITU, and of course you, our fabulous audience. You've been amazing. Thank you for joining us, and it gives me great pleasure now to hand back to the ITU, who will tell us more about what's coming up in the AI for Good program. Thank you both. And it's well worth watching. Over to you, Fred.
Thank you, LJ. Wow, what an amazing session. And thank you to Iker and Manuel for sharing that amazing story, which I really believe personifies AI for good. Before we wrap up, I'd like to highlight a few things that might be of interest to the audience. First, I'd like to ask my colleague Bastian if he could put up a very quick last survey just to see how satisfied you were with the session. And in the meantime, I'll be taking you through some of the programming that is coming up in the next week. So we have an action-packed May with 5 sessions on the horizon covering topics like AI and smart cities, trustworthy AI, developing AI skills for girls done in partnership with UNICEF, AI and health by the well-known speaker Regina Barzilay, another trustworthy AI session. And my colleague will be posting links to the registration forms for all of these sessions in the chat as well. Last but not least, I would also like to highlight that today's session has been recorded fully in Spanish with the full Spanish interpretation, and that will be uploaded to our YouTube channel later tonight. So if you have some Spanish-speaking friends or colleagues who would like to watch a replay, you will be able to share that video as well. And last but not least, we have reached the end of the webinar, and thanks again to LJ, our amazing host, to Iker, to Manuel, to both their teams who really went above and beyond to put this session together. Also the technical team in ITU handling all the interpretation and live streaming. That was a first for all of us. And last but not least, you, the audience, for participating and asking all of your questions. And with that, I say thank you very much and good evening and signing off. Thank you. Goodbye.